All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to share a quick conversation and talk a little bit about some things that we taught our Sunday school class yesterday, and also talk about some other things that went on. You find yourself sometimes being human, of course, and you're trying to be a good father and husband, protector, and a good Christian as well. And you find yourself making these little silly mistakes or doing kind of getting off track a little bit, and you see your ego and your pride maybe go up a little bit too far, and you kind of have to put yourself in check a little bit. And something inside of me telling me, humble yourself for yourself now before you're humbled. And I'm thinking sometimes you have to take a step back and say, okay, what can I do better? How can I keep my ego and my pride in check before I do something dumb that I'm going to regret? Because anytime we let our ego get out of hand or our pride get out of hand, we tend to do something that ends up forcing us to humble ourselves, because we make ourselves look like, you know, a dummy sometimes, let's be honest. So, I was thinking how we need to every day make sure that we're being humble and humbling ourselves before God Himself or our own dumb decisions and bad choices humble us. And I was just thinking about that, son. But we got to teach the young people also on a verse of scripture, and I want to give you this quick thought as well. This channel is all about kind of becoming a protector. He teaches our hands to war, talking about a spiritual aspect of being a protector, a leader, a man. And I don't get to talk about that stuff as much as I would like. And you got to focus on guns when you make a gun channel, because if you don't, you want it to be, you want to attract as many people as possible. So that's what we try to focus on, but also implement the spiritual things and the biblical things and things about Jesus and God as well. But we taught the youth out of Luke chapter 4, and I thought it was interesting that when Jesus went to his hometown in Luke chapter 4, he was around the people that he grew up with all his life. And it's my understanding that the town of Nazareth in Jesus' time, where he grew up and was raised from being pretty much a baby, maybe a young kid, to the time he got older, the population in the city of Nazareth was about around 1,000 people or less. So I'm just going to say that because it's hard to get a real good estimate. But say less than 1,000 people. And our modern cities, like the city I live in right now, has got 30,000 people. And 1,000 people, you would know everybody. There'd be very few people you didn't know if your city had 1,000 people or less than 1,000 people. You may not know them personally, but you would know their face, and you'd probably know of them in a city that small. But when Jesus came to teach, when he started his ministry and he came to teach, they questioned him, saying, "Is this not the son of Joseph?" And they didn't know, or they didn't want to see him as born of a virgin Mary, and probably none that probably been kept secret from most of them people until the time of Jesus' ministry, that Jesus was born of a virgin. And so they seen him as the son of Joseph. So anything that he said, they would just see him as 100% human, even though he had made no mistakes. And we taught the kids too, that kind of proves that the Chosen TV series is kind of wrong, because it showed Jesus doing miracles as a baby and as a kid, not a baby, but as a child. Jesus was doing baby miracles in his childhood. And we know that's probably not true. Maybe he did in secret, but probably not true, because if he'd been doing miracles and people, his friends and his family members, were seeing miracles, then when he came to Jerusalem, they wouldn't have said he was blaspheming by calling himself the Son of God, because they would have had proof. And they hadn't seen no proof. They've watched him grow his whole life, and they just seen a regular kid, learning to be human and doing human things. Never did sin. He was without sin, but he did probably do normal kid stuff. And they never seen him as nobody special. He learned how to be a person, a normal person, his whole life. And so that's the way they wanted to see him. So my thought to the young people yesterday in Sunday school was, do you Have you found yourself surrounded by Jesus your whole life? Or have you found yourself surrendered to Jesus your whole life? Or at some point? I'd a lot rather you be surrendered at this point than surrounded by Jesus your whole life, because what I've found is people that are raised in church, and most of my kids in my Sunday school class have been raised in church, and I have too, my whole life. We tend to get so used to Jesus being a part of our life, his name being mentioned, to the stories, to the tales, to the parables, to the miracles, to the salvation gospel message of him dying on a cross. We get so used to it and complacent. We kind of can be kind of like the city of Nazareth when Jesus went there in Luke chapter 4, where they said, "Isn't this Joseph's son?" And they almost tried to take him up to the hill and push him off the hill and stone him and kill him, because he was basically saying he was the son of God when he started his ministry in Nazareth, and they just seen him as a regular person. So we can be surrounded by the Son of God our whole life and be worse off for it, because we've become so complacent with such a great blessing as him being a part of our lives for so long that we've made it nothing and not important, and we've overlooked who he really is. And that's what those people in Nazareth did. And I think it's just a good lesson, and I was going to talk about it some, but yeah, did we find ourselves surrounded by Jesus, or do we find ourselves surrendered to Jesus? That's a very good message for someone to preach. Now, they could probably do a lot better job than me bringing that scripture out in Luke 4. It's also in Matthew, I think, 23 as well. But, we're blessed in the USA to be surrounded by the things of religion and Jesus. Now, religion's not worth a flip in some cases, but surrounded by the gospel message and Jesus. And some people have been around it so long they've never actually even listened to it. That's kind of the country we live in, that some people have heard about it and heard people preaching on the radio or on TV when they're skimming through the radio or turning channels, and they've heard little glimpses of it, but they've never really paid attention because they're so surrounded by Jesus that they've never really surrendered or paid attention, because it's just been a normal part of their life, where they've had cousins or friends that have accepted Christ, and it hasn't become anything real to them. It hasn't become anything more than the norm to them. And that's kind of sad. So are we surrounded by Jesus, or are we surrendered? And us church folk that have gone to church our whole life struggle with that a lot. We struggle with the fact that we put ourselves in kind of a box of being surrounded by Jesus, and we never truly surrender. So that's something I want to ask you today. Are you surrounded by Jesus, or are you surrendered to Jesus? And you may be separated from Jesus, meaning you don't have nothing to do with him. Every time something comes up or somebody talks about it, you turn it off, or you walk away, or you put yourself as far as possible from the thought of Jesus. And that's another thing. So you can be separated as well. And so those of you that are separated probably would have already turned this video off. However, I just wanted to ask that question today and talk about how, yesterday I seen some things in myself that was kind of just not, I just had to kind of cut back and take a step back and say, it's time to humble myself too. I'm going back to the first part of this video. And because if we don't learn to humble ourselves, and like I said later in the video, see Jesus for who he is, and surrender and listen for that voice, then we're probably going to end up down a bad path. We got to be very careful with that. So being a warrior is not about ego and pride, and confidence is fine, but when it turns into cockiness and you get a little bit too big-headed, you'll find yourself making some really bad choices. You don't want to do that. And I'm nothing but dust, and Jesus alone makes me something, and everything good that I do and everything that I do that I could say is above average or above normal is all by his glory, for his glory, and by his wisdom that he's given me, and the grace that he's given me, and the strength that he's gave me. And I want to be thankful for that and realize I am just dust. and so are you. And we need to see things for what they are and always stay humble. Man, one of the best things that a Christian warrior stands up for God can do is just keep themselves humble, because it's the only way you're going to be used. It's the only way that people are not going to cut you off. If the pride and ego gets into any of this stuff, especially if you're a Christian trying to share the gospel with other people, if any pride gets in that, then people are going to cut us off. So I'm a nobody, just trying to share, who God is, and trying to share my talents and what little skills I have and knowledge that I have that maybe some of you don't have with you. And I hope you'll join the journey and we can do this together. And I've got a lot to learn, and I have learned a lot over the years, but I've got a lot more to learn. So I hope y'all will do this with me, and appreciate you guys for supporting the channel. Please like and subscribe. Please leave comments and thoughts below. And like I said, are you surrounded by Jesus? Do you separate yourself from Jesus, or have you surrendered to Jesus? God bless. Have a great day.